Hello. Hi. Thanks everybody for tuning in to our Sligo iDays launch. I'm Dr. Conrad Mulrennan. I'm the coordinator for the Sligo iDays program. I'm an associate director of the Health and Biomedical Research Centre in ATU. Today, I'm going to introduce what the iDays is to you. I'm going to give an overview of what the competition entails, what the activities are, what the challenges are, and what the potential benefits is for each of you to participate in this competition. So to begin with, what is the iDays? The iDays are innovation days. Essentially, they're challenge-based competitions whereby we have come up with a couple of challenges related to healthcare, and you will work in a multidisciplinary team to tackle those challenges. It's similar to a hackathon in principle. You're going to work through the challenges in a really short space of time and come up with innovative solutions to these problems, coming up with new ideas for products and services that can make a real difference to people's lives. The challenge days themselves are going to be very intense, hectic affairs. They're both in Sligo, on the Sligo campus, on October 20th and October 21st. On the first day of the competition, you're going to meet your teammates. We're going to work through a design thinking user experience workshop whereby you're going to figure out what idea is the best idea from the group. You're going to work through many different modes to figure out how to put together a plan to achieve your idea. You're going to work out a business model canvas and a short two-page business template. This is what's going to be required for the judging panel the following day. In the afternoon, we're going to be we have roundtable presentations, and we have some fantastic guests lined up for those, including startups and also representatives from other entrepreneurial competitions and programs that will give you insights in how to. Well, actually, they'll give you insights into their own personal journeys and what the personal journey is for each of you that you can relate to whatever solution you're going to provide to these challenges. In the afternoon, then, you're going to spend 2 hours with a mentor who's an expert in their respective field. The day will be punctuated by creativity challenges. These creativity challenges will have spot prizes associated with them. And I mean, the entire day in a whole will give you access to a group of people and knowledge and experience that is not typical for your university experience. You're going to have one-to-one experiences with experts from respective fields. You're going to get specific training that's going to be really beneficial to a multitude of your modules and programs going into the future. These are things that are not typically delivered in your college courses. So these are that are going to be invaluable to each of you going into the future. The second day, we have a panel of judges who are one of them who is joining us in the call later, John Gaffney, Sinead Malloy, who is from the HSE Digital Health team, Lorna Ross, the Chief Innovation Officer from BHI, Brenda McLaughlin, the Quality Manager from Prior PLM Medical, and Una Parsons, who's the head of the ATU Sligo campus. These 5 people are going to judge each of your pitches, which are going to be delivered in an elevator style, which means that you're going to have to rapidly pitch your idea to them in 3 minutes. And the judges will then make a decision on the outcome for the competition. We're going to close it out then with awards and closing remarks. Really, this is a day and a half, and we've got so much crammed into it. It's going to be exciting, it's going to be intense, and it's going to be a really hectic but fun experience. The challenges that we've had set. So the first one I'm looking at here has been set by the HSE Digital Health team. And this one is to develop a framework for a health service to promote both staff and/or a person's willingness to adopt a self-management application or platform to support chronic disease management, which translates into their sustained use of that app. Now, for example, this could be anything. This could be the development of a training program. This could be the development of a technology. This could be the development of new skills that are required. This is very broad. So we really want you to think about how you can get people to engage more with chronic disease management applications. This could be the end user could be a clinical team, the end user could be a patient, the end user could be look to your own personal experience. The end user could be you, the end user could be a family member or a friend. So try to tap into your own personal experiences when you're coming up with these ideas to solve these problems. The second challenge is really broad as well. It's a tool, initiative, or an application or a program to develop healthier third level campuses for all. My own interpretation of that is that it is really broad. What is a healthy campus? And I'm hopeful that Caroline, who's the HEA Healthy Campus Coordinator and is joining us later, will be able to answer that for me, because for me it is such a broad challenge that really you could be doing anything to improve mental health, to create safe spaces, to improve nutrition on the campus, to have more color, all of this to make it more sustainable. There's so many areas that this could go into. It's really broad and really open to everyone. We're really excited about the ideas that are going to come back to us from each of you who are participating. The prizes, I mean, this is the real, there are some real major benefits beyond the learning experience and the participation experience that you're going to have. A winning team will represent us in a European final with all expenses paid. So you'll travel to Europe and you're going to present and pitch your idea in a European final against the finalists from other universities across the continent. In addition to that, one team will get an internship with their industrial partner who are Prior PLM Medical. So that's next summer. One of the teams will spend an entire summer interning in Prior. The benefits to that, to your CV going forward, would be are significant. Another prize provided by the digital health team in the HSE is mentorship and the potential to apply your solution to the first challenge in practice. Again, the benefits to you as an individual going forward with this type of recognition on your CVs, especially when you're going looking for a job in the next few years, is so significant. You're going to have such an advantage over others compared to those who don't compete in the program. We're also within ATU, we're going to put training and support in place. If you've got a really good idea that is potentially could make a major difference in people's lives, then we're going to give you the training and support to progress that into an actual product or service. And then, as I said, the competition itself will be permeated with creativity challenges, which will have spot prizes throughout those as well. So I just one final note. So these are the partners who are running the Sligo event. It is sponsored by the European Institute for Innovation and Technology Health, and it has been run by the ATU and Prior PLM Medical and the Health and Biomedical Research Centre that we have here. So I'm going to pass over now to our first speakers, and I'd like to introduce Professor Geraldine McCarthy and Aisling Gannon. And Professor McCarthy is the consultant psychiatrist of old age in Sligo and also a professor in the University of Galway Medical School. And Aisling is part of the digital transformation team in the HSE and also the general manager of digital health in the community healthcare for Cavan, Donegal, Leitrim, Monaghan and Sligo. So I'd like to introduce Geraldine and Aisling and pass it over to you now for your presentations.
Thank you very much, Conrad, and thanks very much for the introduction and for inviting us to come along today. Delighted to be part of this, and it is so important to always be thinking a little bit outside of the box in relation to trying to develop new ways of providing healthcare. So really just going to give you a little bit of background, talk a little bit about our own story in relation to the service that I was involved in setting up over 20 years ago now, and talking a little bit about digital transformation, because that's been a really important thing that we've really had to embrace with COVID. And Aisling had been working with us in the integrated care, and she's gone on now to be the lead in digital health. So I'm absolutely delighted to be presenting with her today. So thank you. So that's our team base. It's the Mental Health Service for Older Persons. We cover Sligo, Leitrim, West Cavan and South Donegal, and that's our community team base where we have a day hospital for patients to attend as well. And the patients we look after are older, and we have an ageing population. So this is a growth industry for developing new ways of working and helping people to stay well, stay at home as much as possible, so they get the right care in the right way at the right time. And our older population, everybody gets older, so it's in all our interest to do a good job to ensure that there are, the best ways of providing the care that we need to provide. So we look after people over 65 living in this region that have mental health difficulties, but they also will have many other things wrong with them as well in relation to their physical health. So thinking about today, really, the best ideas are the simplest ones, the ones that when you hear somebody's come up with, you think, God, I wish I came up with that. But they're ones that mean something to you. So thinking about things that you have seen and how you can progress things. So I thought I might just sort of put in context a little bit about my own story and the service that I set up, which has been running since 2001. So it was a greenfield site. There was nothing here. There was no service. There was no office. There was no nothing. And you have to try and work out, how to get this up and off the ground. And it's a little bit anxiety provoking and a little bit daunting, and you're not quite sure exactly how you're going to go about it. But the way you do that is kind of working out what's actually needed. What are the areas that we need to look at? And not every idea we had came to fruition. I was saying at a previous talk, when COVID hit and we all had to really deep clean our offices, I found lots of documents with lots of great plans to develop things that didn't happen. But many things did happen, and it's about working, the right care, the right place, the right time, and coming out with new ideas. So we provide care in people's own homes, but also we have a day hospital, and we have clinics sort of around the counties. And from the very beginning, we realized you have to evaluate what you're doing, you have to research it. And each of the projects that we did really led to further innovation and better ways of doing it. And I think the other thing you need to think about when you're trying to come up with something new is that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes there can be things that are already there that you can adapt. And also, things aren't set in stone. You don't have to always do things the same way. So one of the things we really worked out early on was that with older people, it's not just the person themselves and their mental health problems, it's their physical health problems as well, and also their carers. So we, got involved in developing solutions and, to support carers as well. And I think that's something just to think wider and think bigger. There's also projects that are national that can kind of inform developing things. And we were fortunate enough to link in with the National Integrated Care Programme. And that's how Aisling came to work with us as a nurse in the Integrated Care team. But she had a real skill set in relation to digital innovation. And that was a huge, huge bonus to us. So again, it's finding the right people to work with, and everybody's got something to contribute, and just it's working out, the skill set, what's the best thing for each person kind of going forward. Sorry now. So one thing that we can talk about the innovation, and we can talk about, new ideas and digital transformation. But a huge amount of it is actually, the working relationships, working with people together. And one of the biggest changes and things that we've done is actually have a regular meeting with senior consultants and multidisciplinary team members from neurology and psychiatry and geriatric medicine, from physiotherapy, speech and language therapy, psychology. and working together, we can actually come up with much better plans, to improve things. So it's that ability to work as a team, which you'll really find useful going forward in your working life. So over the course of our time working, or my time working in Sligo, we have gotten involved in lots of different research and innovation grants. We got funding through Genio, which is with Atlantic Philanthropies. And again, it's very much coming up with an idea that can make a difference. One of those class was a really simple idea that carers could support other carers, and we trained them up and supported them to support other people. Very, very simple. Another one was home from home. So basically, a regular bungalow in West Sligo, people could go for daycare. Their relative could go there for daycare and be supported there, where so the families could go to work. There was another project we actually did with the EIT Sligo, with what ATU was formerly. With the BMW Assembly, and it was some really innovative research, just looking at what people wanted with dementia. And what came out of it was such a simple concept, and it was Saturday daycare. So basically, there's facilities there. They've got heating, they've got electricity, they're there, but they're empty at the weekend. And when people really need to be helped, it can often be at the weekend. If they're looking after an elderly relative with dementia, they might want to go to their kids' football match, and they can't do that. They're tied up. So, very simple innovations can actually make a very, very big difference. And brain diabetes is another. It was a cross-border grant. It was a large grant, 750,000, where we looked at lifestyle interventions for people with type 2 diabetes to try to prevent depression and dementia, getting people to exercise, getting people to monitor their diet, their cardiovascular risks. And with COVID, we had to adapt that. We had to go and do some of the interventions online, and we've had a huge amount of learning from that. At least that sometimes using technology is too difficult for people, and working out how to make it really accessible to people. So you can come up with many things, but you also have to look at the pros and the cons. So we're very aware, working in the northwest of Ireland, about loneliness and isolation, and this is something that we'd already been researching. And then COVID hit, and everybody, not only who was already isolated and lonely, were told to stay home. And that, basically you have to evolve and adapt. And I think the COVID pandemic taught us more than anything how important it is for us to work out how we can still continue to provide care in a difficult situation at a difficult time. So I'd actually bring the camera and actually show you my desk right now. And I'm sad to say that it probably still looks quite like the messy one, because we use pieces of paper. However, we did go to using much more digital communicating with patients, using Blue Eye, using Attend Anywhere, linking in with Microsoft Teams or Zoom, linking, patients who were at home could link in with the Alexa or with Attend. So you could actually, do the work online, and people were safe and they didn't have to come out and about. And some of the time, it doesn't always work. So it's kind of to get that balance right. So when you're coming up with ideas, the way the whole health service is going now with Sláinte Care is very much an integrated approach. It's across acute, community, residential facilities. It's people themselves and the people looking after them, and us all working together. And that is the only way that you really get good quality care. So when you're thinking about new ideas, it's an integrated approach. So these are just a few colleagues that were working with me as senior registrars over the last few years. And again, they adopted what they were doing and ways. So reflective practice is something very important in psychiatry, but it was difficult for us to meet face to face. So we pivoted the actual meetings to online and continued to support people. So that was super. Sam Patel is a senior registrar who's in Galway now. She was working with us, looking at telehealth, working with our older patients, looking at the use of mobile technology across a whole range of areas. And that's been hugely informative. And with Ashling's help to get us actually up and running, it's made a really big difference. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. And then similarly for exams, Dr. Mamuna looked at actually, what the impact of actually examining people for a psychiatry exam online was. So that we developed lots of new ways of looking at things, but also to reflect and to evaluate it and keep what's good and tweak what could be improved. This was something that we came up with palliative care and GP, that we realised we needed to still be really reactive to people's needs. So we had, from a research project, we had tablets, mobile tablets, and we gave them to the nursing homes so that we could then continue to link in with them, even if they had a COVID outbreak, and GPs, and so could the palliative care team. Again, very simple. I mean, everybody nearly has a smartphone or has, but it allowed us to go ahead and to evaluate that. And the research piece allowed us to cut corners a little bit in relation to, obviously we had ethics, but, in relation to, bigger processes. So we're able to see what's actually going on and how we can support people. So we developed lots of partnerships. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that. And it's really been super. One of the initiatives was getting, linking with the council and developing some community hubs with Alone supporting it. Because with older people, technology is fab, but they may not be able to use it. So Alone had a support worker helping people to actually get online. Because, I mean, you're using technology, but certainly if you're trying to send things to your granny, she may sort of send the text to your mum to send on to you, as opposed to actually being able to use the technology. So it's linking in every way you can to kind of improve the quality of the service that's happening. So I won't talk too much about this. This is, again, a loneliness study that we're looking at, and we try to look at, quality of life, well-being, and loneliness, and also see what the staff and the patient experience was with this. We had to kind of work out how we could respond to patients. So we got a risk stratification register. We basically worked out who was most at risk during COVID and how we could stay in touch with them. And we used the donations of smart hubs or Alexa hubs and Wi-Fi's and tablets to support people. So if they were very high risk, they could have a tablet at home and they could link in with us as they needed, or for a clinic or for an emergency. Again, with the loneliness study, we included the use of some of the technologies to try to help support people as well. Again, in the nursing homes, again, some of Dr. Sam Patel's work was putting these tablets into the nursing home. We could, with people, they needed Wi-Fi as well, so that had to be provided too. So these kind of practical things make a big difference. We were doing clinics with nursing homes remotely. Now, we still, as much as possible, we'll see people face to face. But for some people, it gave them peace of mind that they didn't have to travel. And it's something that we can still do if too. So the smart hubs were the use of Alexa, Amazon Alexas. And some patients really, really did like these, are able to link in. But again, we ran into some difficulties in relation to I suppose data collection and data privacy as well. So, when you're looking at using technology, you need to think about these things as well. But what was really lovely about the smart hubs, there's a couple of quotes, but there was, somebody who was interested in history, or somebody who liked to play Mike Denver, or just feeling isolated, they know that they could kind of call in. So that it was very much person-centered care. So generally, older people were positive about using technology, even though it might be a little bit daunting for them to start with. They adapted well, and there were patients that I never would have thought would have been able to engage remotely with us, and they did really, really, really well. I just mentioned the digital hubs there. Again, it's in a community centre, community setting where there is internet access, so people can actually link in and have their hospital appointment. They could get the blood test done with the doctor and have their hospital appointment, or link in with an exercise class, or because it's the access to it's the use of the computer sometimes can be quite tricky. So these are a couple of papers that we wrote, and very much about evolving and developing the use of telehealth. And one of my colleagues is actually doing her doctorate in this area. So it's been hugely informative to us, because you have to constantly evolve. So very much it is multidisciplinary, which is what you're going to have with your iDays. It is about integration, which you need to think, how will this link in with different services? You have to adapt. And digital transformation is a huge part of that. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to my colleague Aisling, who's going to talk a little bit more about that. And I really hope there'll be lots of questions, because I think this is really what this is about as you come up with your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. And I just got to say it's thanks to leaders like you that have enabled us in our digital health team to continue that innovation going. And Conrad and the team, thank you for having us today. So as you might have heard there, I did work with Geraldine. So I do have a background in nursing. So I come with to my current role with a clinical and an actual sort of ICT business background. And I've spent over the last 20 years developing digital pathways in services. Now, for those of you that might know the HSC, we actually do have a department called the EIT Health, and they are the ones that look after our infrastructure, networks, equipment, and our systems. However, our team actually sits within operations, and we work with staff on the ground looking at how to digitalise their pathways. We run co-design workshops. We're starting to get them to think outside of the box to how can they actually embed digital care into the services. Throughout this presentation, I hope that we give you tips, things to consider, ideas for the self-management competition. Unfortunately, you might find some duplication in my message with some of the slides that Geraldine has already said today. So we have worked together. And finally, yes, there is a cheesy tagline on this first slide, but our aim is to actually try to get staff and patients to start thinking digital. At the end of the day, the technology is just one part of this, but change has to start with people on the ground. So just to give some context to the health service, there is the government policy, Launch Care, and it's all about right care at the right time in the right place. And we believe that digital health is a key enabler in this. Traditionally, we run a face-to-face model. And also, as Geraldine was saying about her desk there, unfortunately, a lot of staff are still very paper heavy, which makes us as an organisation information rich, but data poor. So, a lot of people could ask, what are the actual benefits of digital transformation in healthcare? And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of here just to get your thought process, just thinking about the competition. Evidence has shown that even simple text messages for appointments can increase attendance and reduce DNAs by nearly 70%. So thinking of when you've actually been a patient and you get told that you've got an appointment, those reminders and things are really, really helpful. Another project that I've worked on in the past, for instance, is with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is a respiratory disorder. And we worked with the Met Office, and they actually had a prediction model that was able to tell when there was going to be a weather synapse, and a telephone call was made to patients to actually let them know that one of these synapses was about to happen. And they took their emergency medication, and there was a 50% reduction in hospital avoidance. So sometimes we think of the big solutions, but there's also just some simple solutions that can actually have a massive impact. So think big, but also think of the simple parts that might actually help when you're thinking of the competition. The other thing to just be aware of is that one size does not fit all for patients. There's people with a range of disabilities, with hearing problems, with sight problems. There's people that might have diagnosis of Parkinson's, which causes muscle movement issues, so they might not be able to use touch screens as much. So voice activation solutions might be a more appropriate solution for those people. We face a range of difficulties with technology, so they're things that just it's really important to consider. So you've seen this slide with Geraldine before, but COVID has had a massive impact, an explosion in technology in the HSC. And this is where I said about the duplication in slides. We did go from a very paper-based organisation to a lot of tools being given to us for healthcare deliveries. One of the benefits of such an awful situation was the adoption of technology. And we know from this that both staff and patients were able to change and adopt. So we know that we can do it. However, as you might all have been aware, we had the cyber attack, and unfortunately we have taken a giant step back. It's also highlighted a lot of challenges. So when you're thinking about the competition, you just think about things that we're in rural Ireland, and like Geraldine was saying about the networks in some of our areas are poor. So that's why we put in things like the digital hub. So there might be, you might need that the patients need to go somewhere with good networks and able to access their self-management app. We have a variety of people with digital literacy. We have people that say they can't turn on computers, and actually they're most probably right, because we are in a very much smartphone, touch-enabled society, and computers, are becoming a thing of the past for some people, and it is the touch screen. So the biggest challenge, though, however, for us is the culture. It's getting people to change. So they're the considerations for when you're putting together your application. However, even though we have these challenges, there is a massive opportunity for us, and the COVID has shown that people are open to change, and that we can change. So since October last year, we each community health organisation, which consists generally of about 5 counties, there's now a digital health team. And like I said before, we're not the e-health team, and that's where most of the ICT budget goes, and that's their portfolio is looking after systems. They'll be the ones that will be responsible for implementing the National Electronic e-health record. So our team is very much looking at how can we actually get people to embed digital health in their pathways. So this is our team. We work with over 6,000 staff, and we work across a variety of organisations. In digital health, there's a lot of emphasis on electronic health records and stuff that can enable care, but also we need to remember the people on the ground as well. So we have maintenance staff, we have cleaning staff, we have admin staff, all that benefit from digital health, and our team works across that depth of organisation. This is very small, but this is just some of the projects that we're working on. So we're working on chronic disease management, integrated care. We're looking at remote monitoring. We're looking at how to work with services to enable access to Wi-Fi for residential settings for patients. We're working with our HR and so on. So there's a breadth of projects that we're working on. So when we talk about digital transformation, this is sort of a 5-point slide. And at the moment where we are, we're at 1 and 2. So we're reactive and we are organised. However, we haven't got to the point where we're intelligent, and we're using artificial intelligence to be able to feed back and to actually use data to dictate what our service needs are. So we're trying to move to 2 to 3. So we're trying to digitalise our services at the moment. When you're doing your competition, things to consider, one of the things that we get a lot in our service is we get people coming to us and they've heard about a nice, bright, shiny new toy, they've heard about a new system, and they come to us and say, we want this system. The last part for us is always the technology. It's only one small part of the whole process. The other things that need to be considered are the strategy and culture. We need to think about the stakeholders, how are we actually going to engage them? We need to think about the process, and that's one of the biggest things for us is like who's going to do what at what point in the journey. So you could have a system, but unless people take ownership of different parts of that system, it's not going to work. And then the biggest one for us is the data. I've talked there about being information rich and data poor. In order, when we get these systems, we really do need to be getting back the data and showing the value that we're bringing to our services. And there's a lot of systems that we've had out there in the past that actually don't give that reporting. And we end up with lots of manual systems working around what is meant to be a solution. So a lot of systems, people end up still doing manual reporting, but it'll be really, really good when things are inbuilt completely. So back to the Sláinte care, right care at the right time. Digital is at the heart of future healthcare, and it is a key enabler. And within digital health in CHO1, we're on a mission to change how services view digital health. We want to help with the move from hospital to community. So recently we just had a new advanced nurse practitioner come in who is responsible for virtual wards. And she's actually going to start looking at how can she actually get people over 65 home quicker and use remote monitoring to help them to stay at home and to reduce their need to stay in hospital, and reverse that as well. How do we keep them out? So where we know that there's people that are high risk, if we use remote monitoring, can we actually keep them out of hospital? I've mentioned before about staff and patients adopting digital. I have a lot where people say it's not in my scope of practice, it's not in my job. However, we know that culture change is hard, and people find it difficult when they have to move away from current practices. But it's key that we engage everybody. And if I asked who's had smartphones, normally in a room, 80%, 90% would put their hands up. There's many of us that have booked flights online, banking online. We've all adapted. So we're really sending that message out to staff and patients that if we do it at home, why can we not do that in healthcare? What do we need to do? So our team, you've seen this slide, but I really cannot stress enough about the 5 strands. So we've started doing co-design workshops with all of our stakeholders in different departments. So when someone asks us for a system now, they can be guaranteed that we'll be coming along with our bag with post-it notes and paper to actually start mapping out what is their actual issues. How can digital solutions actually solve that gap? This is an example of a piece of work that we've done using design and co-design. And it's very much around that chronic disease self-management. So we went out and we worked with staff to actually look at the referral pathways. And historically, what would happen is somebody would sit on a waiting list, they'd come in, and now we're looking at how can we actually start working with people as soon as they come in the door. Can we send them an app? Can we start giving them self-management tools? Are there things that we can do to signpost them to other services? Are there gamification tools that we can use to improve outcome? So when you're in the competition, it'll be really key to sort of use this same design that we've done. And Conrad has said that you will be taught this in your workshops. Geraldine mentioned working with the council. So when you're developing your competition, think about what we call the quadruple helix. And that is how can your solution be developed and in partnership with public services, so that could be the HSC or the council, commercial companies, so the ones that be providing the technology solution, academic partners such as Sligo, in order to research and evaluate what you're doing. But most of all, how are you going to engage with the stakeholders, patients and staff? Here's an end product of one of our co-design workshops. So this was done in a chronic disease management hub, and we actually ended up with over 15 different workflows, from referral to self-management to intervention to discharge. There's lots of different workflows and processes that could happen underneath. So so I suppose the point here is that we don't always give a solution at the end. Sometimes it could be process maps that actually are what needed. So in your competition, to think about areas to consider, especially when working in the health service. One of the things I talked about was data and data collection. However, we also have to worry about security. We have to worry about how someone's data is held. We have to make sure that we do what we call a data privacy impact assessment, and we have to show that the data is safe. With the technology, don't reinvent the wheel. About something that actually could already be out there. Does it fit into the pathway? Are there things that we can learn from technologies that are already out there? And we've already talked about the culture, engaging stakeholders. So what's the impact on the services? What is going to make what experience is it going to make better for people? What change will it make, and how can we get them to embrace that? Sorry. So rather than me, I suppose we're really looking forward to hearing about the competition, and rather than me sort of talking about it from the outside, I really want to show you this video now of a patient and for you to get their first-hand experiences of challenges that they had in their healthcare and how that they used a digital solution actually helped them in their journey.
Hello, my name is Dorian Enright, and I'm going to recount an incident which occurred the beginning of January 2020, and how I obtained a diagnosis using technology, medical advice and self-management. My husband and I were out for a walk one morning. About 20 minutes into the walk, my heart started fluttering. As we moved on, it got stronger and stronger until about 10 minutes from home, I was getting very, very strong palpitations. I did manage to arrive home safely, and I went into the kitchen, took my blood pressure. It showed a very, very high blood pressure, a regular heart. I got my husband to screenshot the screen and checked my Fitbit, which showed huge spikes, some up to 200 beats a minute. At that point, I knew I had no alternative but to go to Mullingar Casualty. By the time we arrived at Casualty, my heart had stabilised. I showed one of the nurses the readout from my blood pressure, the Fitbit readings, and I was actually seen very, very quickly. I was transferred to the cardiac unit where I saw Dr. Cronin. I was given every test under the sun, including a stress test, echo, etc., full NCT. Unfortunately, everything was negative, and Dr. Cronin at that point was unable to give me any treatment or to make a diagnosis. Despite the negative tests, I knew that something was wrong. Dr. Cronin was very sympathetic, and she recommended a Holter. She also suggested a Cardia Mobile might prove useful, as it was an ECG monitor that I could use at home. I got a 48-hour Holter from the GP. Unfortunately, it showed very little, just a minor blip, but the Cardia proved absolutely invaluable. This is the Cardia. As you can see, it's conveniently placed at the back of my phone. To take an ECG, I just put my fingers at the back, press record. It takes 30 seconds and gives me the reading. You can see the recordings and it gives you a full history. Each time I had an episode after that, I recorded it on the Cardia. Finally, I went to the GP armed with my Cardia history and the irregularities shown on the Fitbit, and was referred to a cardiologist. Predominantly on the basis of the Cardia, I was diagnosed with supraventricular tachycardia, following which I had an ablation, and I've been fine since. The Cardia Mobile was not only beneficial for myself, but two other members of my family, in particular my sister, who was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation following the use of the Cardia. It shows that how treatment and diagnosis can be improved when technology, medical advice and self-management come together. Thank you for listening. I hope this shows that us, geriatrics, a word I detest, can use technology and equipment just as usefully as the younger generation. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to finish on that, Dorian was very adamant about over 65s. They're written off with technology, but a lot of the evidence actually shows that that if you show people how to use the technology, they're actually the best users, unlike younger people that actually flitter between different platforms and things. So this is just a real example how self-management can actually help somebody in their journey. So this is a saying that we use in our team. It's better to have tried than not try. And if you fail, or if we try a solution and it doesn't work, it's about what we do to take that and to learn from it and to try again. So just on behalf of Geraldine and myself, just want to say thank you very much for having us today.
Thanks to Geraldine and Aisling for two wonderful presentations there. We're now going to pivot into a question and answer forum, and I'd like to introduce our two additional guests who are going to be joining myself and Geraldine and Aisling. We have Caroline Mahan, who is a Senior Executive Officer with the Healthy Campus Coordinator with the Higher Education Authority. And Caroline's role is no small remit. It is she's got the responsibility for rolling out the Healthy Campus framework across all higher education institutions in Ireland. And also welcome to John Getty. John is an Enterprise Ireland Cluster Manager for Digital Health Industries. And John is also a BioInnovate Fellow and actually a mentor with Enterprise Ireland and the EIT Health. So John might be able to give some insights into that role as well. So first things first, I'm going to start with Caroline. Caroline, maybe you can tell us all, what is a healthy campus? Yeah, no problem. Sorry, Caroline. Sorry, there's no audio coming through at the moment, Caroline. I'm not sure if we can just check that.
Is that okay? Can
Yes,
you hear
that's
me now?
perfect now. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry,
You
I
probably
had.
give a wonderful answer there.
Well, I wasn't
Yeah,
getting any reaction, so I might
yeah,
reshape it, but you couldn't hear me, so that's.
yeah. So please tell us now what is a healthy campus? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So the Healthy Campus Framework was developed through Healthy Ireland and the HSE, and has now officially been transferred over to the Higher Education Authority. And it's really about a process for an institution on how to become well. So it's based on the Okanagan Charter for Health Promoting Universities. So it takes a holistic view of health and well-being, and it gives you a process. So it's sort of an overarching framework of how you would go about improving the health and well-being of students and staff within your institution. Um, so yeah, it's a really broad concept, but we want it to be that way, because if you were to look at an individual's well-being, I can tell you might need to drink 8 glasses of water a day, but it's much better if you can assess where you're at within your life course or your journey, or what resources are available to you. So all of those things come into play when it comes to an institution's looking at their own well-being, and it's really about empowering, from top down to bottom up. And it's about that systems approach. We know that health promotion works, but it needs to work together. So if we are doing fragmented pieces of work and they're separated, that's not going to change, or create a supportive environment for health. So it's about looking at policies. So if we're looking at healthy eating, we need to look at the policies an institution has, not just whether we tell people how to eat well. We need to do and be all those things. So yeah.
Thank you, Caroline. Tell us, what do you feel are because it is so broad, and every single solution that we're going to get coming back to us, I would suggest there's going to be quite varied. But critically, what key ingredients are going to be needed in each solution? What is each team going to have to consider when they're coming up with their solution or their ideas? If we could just narrow that a little bit so that they know what they
Yeah.
need, what the considerations are.
Of course, and I was reflecting on this, and kind of one thing I maybe might encourage is to kind of move beyond education or information. So they're really useful, and absolutely, if that's an idea you have, explore that. But I'd really challenge you to think beyond that. So if you're thinking about, there's a couple of frameworks out there as well. So I definitely say to maybe have a look at the framework for the Healthy Campus and look at the process. But then there's things like there's a drug use in higher education study that was done last year. There's a consent framework. There's a student mental health framework. So try and see within the system, does your idea or is the need fitting within a framework, within a whole system approach. So I'd really push you, to move beyond education. So if you want to look at drug use within your population, within the youth population, within higher education, think a little bit, could you think about an intervention that goes beyond education? And actually in that drug survey, education was rated really low in terms of what students want to see. So maybe you want to take some inspiration from Electric Picnic and the drug testing kit that was set up through the HSE. Try and move beyond the education piece, and see if you are wanting to work through a setting like a higher education, think about, how it might link with the healthy campus. So is there a healthy campus person in ATU Sligo? Yes, there is. So maybe touch base with Yvonne, try and think about where your idea plugs into the system. It doesn't need to tick all the boxes, but just to be aware that, yes, this does take a box within the system, and maybe you want to include some recommendations to how to kind of further embed it. So you can focus, but just to have that, look up and then look down, I guess.
Thanks, Carolyn. And I'm going to put this question to you, but this question will come around to everyone as well. So, how do you make it inclusive? So, how do you get people to buy in to whatever you're doing? So, no, because I mean, like, a healthy campus is going to impact so many people across the campus. So, how do you make your good idea an idea for everyone? Is there any advice you could give to that?
Yeah, well, I guess it's talk. It's kind of that co-design, and I'm not sure if that's a core element of the challenge, but it's talking to the people who are working and researching in that space. So, if we take specifically, if we look at the mental health framework, having a whole campus team, a mental health team, and having multiple disciplines, having the counselor is amazing, and yes, absolutely have them, but also have the health promotion person, have your president. So talk to multiple stakeholders, like Aisling had mentioned, whether you want to look at existing data and then maybe doing some focus groups, but it's really about engaging with those that you'll be working with, and those who have influence. So if you do want to do a drug testing kit at the next student union event, well, you're going to have to make sure the president or the chief operating officer, you're going to have to temperature check with them and sense check with them and see if it's something they'd be open to. Yeah, so I guess it's thinking about all those stakeholders.
Thank you, Caroline. And I suppose that's a question we can put out to our president, if she's okay with drug testing at our next event.
I know, I totally honed in on that. I just thought it was like a timely example.
No, that's great. Thank you very much, John. I want to ask you, John, because you're so closely involved with multiple industries. You work with startups, SMEs, multinationals. You've gone through the BioInnovate program. You're so fine-tuned with that sector. How do you pick the problem to solve? Now, I know we've got two challenges here, but they're quite broad, and they've got massive problems associated with each of them. How do you pick one? How do you find one that's worth solving?
Thanks, Conrad, and thank you very much for inviting me along today. I suppose the obvious question, me being a BioInnovate fellow, would be to really look at your problem statement or your unmet need. And I think it's the whole process of screening those needs and having a number of them and funnel them and go through them all and rate them all. That's quite a critical process. So, every idea and any idea is valuable, and to have a cross-functional team amongst your group that really, someone looks at it from a clinical perspective, somebody looks at it from a regulatory perspective, somebody looks at it from a very much commercial and a technical perspective. So I think the balance of having the right makeup of a team and challenging, every idea is a good idea. And then the discipline of, as I say, a problem statement and rating those statements, that's a very structured and disciplined approach, which is very typical of medtech, people that get involved in clinical immersion and looking at areas of opportunity.
Thanks, John. And I just wonder now, and maybe you'd speak to experience here, because you do work across a large industrial sector with so many different types of companies and people. What would be your advice insofar as risk? Do you take a small challenge there's a greater chance of success, or do you go for the more risk, but the outcome will have much more significant impact for the end user, whether that is a clinical person or a patient or just the average person who's on our campus? What's the approach to that, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, it's a challenging one, and everyone faces this quite significantly. I think practicality does come into it very quickly. So if I'm sure the judging panel will be looking for practicality above all else. If you've got a fantastic technology that you're trying to adopt into a solution, but it doesn't work, then it is not going to work. it has to be very realistic and practical in terms of its effectiveness. So look, don't try and revolutionize the world. Certainly pick off something that, you do believe is achievable and adoptable.
Okay, and so you've identified your problem, you've gone through the process, and how will our teams sell this? How will they sell their solution and their idea to the judging panel? And this is valuable insight for all tuned in, given that John is one of our judges.
Well, I'm going to give you a very typical industry answer here from, I always, when I mentor startups, you're pitching from day one. The minute you've got your idea and you're starting to talk about it, you're ultimately selling your solution, your product, or your service. So, it's so important to have certain areas covered in that pitch. Ultimately, things like novelty, can it be protected? Regulatory affairs, is it a digital therapeutic that you're going to look at, or is it a non-digital therapeutic? Is it technology freely available, and do you have the expertise within your group to adopt it? Again, the typical things I referred to earlier: technology push versus market pull. Market pull will win out every time above technology, and having that cross-functional team and showing for all the world, the investors, the people that want to see this, they're really investing in the team and the expertise and the background and the validation of that idea.
Thank you, John. Some great answers there. I'm going to move to Aisling now. And Aisling, the challenge team has come up with one of our challenges, and I want to know what's inspired it. Where did it come from? What are the real life experiences that you thought that this was the challenge that's worth putting to our students?
Yes, Conrad. So it's actually been inspired by a workshop that we did with young people aged 15 to 18. And we were just looking at what were their pain points in their health journey. And the two biggest things that actually came out of that one was signposting. It's just that they just weren't sure where to go and what was out there, just even from outside of the HSC. So what support peer-to-peer groups were there. But the biggest thing they were saying was about reducing their waiting time. We had some youngsters that are in there that were seen within 2 weeks with emergency services. And frightfully, we had one young person that had the experience of waiting over 5 years before they were seen by the services. So it's about how do we reduce those waiting times, and even if somebody is on a waiting list, how can we start engaging with them using self-management and digital tools? Just to sort of talk about what Caroline was saying there, I think one of the biggest things for us is actually ask the people that ask your family, ask your friends, what were their burdens or pain points when they've used our health services. And we always use the process of rosebud thorn. So it's always good to actually find out what has worked well and what hasn't worked well and where the opportunities are, because there's nothing worse than putting in a solution that actually takes away a good process or something that's good that's happening. So make sure that you think about what's working well within the challenges as well.
Thanks, Aisling. And I suppose following on from the question I asked John, because a colleague of yours, Sinead Malloy, is on our judging panel as well, and this is a challenge that's set by your team. What are you guys looking for? When the teams are pitching their ideas for this challenge, what are you going to be looking for?
I'm going to use the word whole system approach. So we just want to know what benefit is actually going to bring to the patient. Do they get better quickly? Do they get seen quicker? Are their outcomes better? And for the staff, does it make their life easier? Does it reduce the burden? So we're just looking for innovative solutions that actually just show change, health benefit changes, as well as organisational and service change.
Thanks, Aisling.
It is very broad. I know it's very broad, but healthcare is such a vast. When we talk about self-management, especially chronic disease, we're talking about lots of different disease areas. So just to give you one of the things that we face. So when we talk about mobile apps, there's a dearth of them out there. There's ones for depression, there's one for diabetes. So for us, it's difficult. We don't want people to having to be logging into lots of different apps. So is there a way that we can collate that or make life easier, that it's one app for one patient and there's one solution for staff and not these multitude of things that are out there at the moment?
Thank you, Aisling. I hope there are notes being taken for this, but the recording is going to be available as well for people to review. That's some great insights there from John and Aisling as far as the competition will be judged. Geraldine, if you could come in, because there's a few points that have been touched on, and it really was evident when you were speaking about some of the projects that you've worked on, especially when you were speaking about the carer support network and the Saturday clinics. These were, when I was listening to you, these came from the needs analysis of the people who were most affected, that public and patient involvement. What are the challenges and how do you overcome those to get more of those voices? Like how do you capture more of those opinions and voices, the people that are going to be most affected by any change?
I think that there's a fundamental culture piece to it, is that always to be looking out for that feedback. For example, there's a setup called Care Opinion that people accessing our services can send in comments and get replies to, and to sort of say comments that they make. I think the whole PPI thing is getting much more organised and supported, and I was at the launch just this week for Dementia Trials Ireland, working with the Alzheimer's Society as well, where they're really developing training and support for PPI, and I think that's quite important, because it can feel a little bit lonely and isolated sometimes when you're there just trying to look after someone and you can't see that kind of bigger piece. But I think to be constantly thinking, what is important, think yourself when you're accessing services, what's important, and thinking, listening to what people say every time you see them at the clinic. Often it's quite simple things that make a big difference. If there's an appointment, that it's at the time it's supposed to be, as opposed to sometimes there could be kind of a block appointment given to everybody for the one time. That just doesn't make sense. I think always being open and listening to what people want and need. And I suppose the beauty for me in being involved in setting up a new service is that we could kind of do that. We could say, well, look, there isn't anything here, so anything we have hopefully will be better than the nothing that was there before. But that if people would prefer to be seen at home, if people would prefer, some people, even in COVID, still prefer to come in face to face. And even when services everywhere were closing, we said, if you really want to be seen, we'll see you. We'll just make sure the place is as clean as it's ever been. And, we'll space out the appointments and we'll kind of make it safe. Because, it's about always being open to listen to what's important. And I think it's knowing your audience, knowing who it is you're trying to, pitch for, what it is you're trying to do, what is it you're trying to develop. It's kind of interesting with the research, the brain diabetes one, in relation to, for example, the exercise intervention. Normally the exercise classes were face-to-face, and, there's a real benefit from that group effect, that you're kind of motivated to go and you kind of meet for the cuppa afterwards, so you can have that cake after doing all that lovely exercise. So online, people didn't engage as well. So we need to look at, why is that? Or is there a better way of doing it? So I really think it's just always having that culture, is that, it doesn't always have to be like this. Be open to think of new ways of doing it. And just, think outside the box a little bit in relation to it. Carolyn was talking about mental health, but it's important to recognise mental illness. People, when they are struggling, that they get signposted the right way, and that they don't get sort of stigmatised in relation to that it's easy to pick up and kind of point people in the right direction. So I think it's always been open and listening, and thinking about your target. What do they need, and go for something that means something to you. It's always about kind of, you're much more likely to find a good solution if it really is something special for yourself, that you're invested in it, or somebody has been through it, or whatever. You can really see the kind of passion. I think that always comes across if someone is pitching something to you. I'm not working in industry, but I've certainly had lots of things pitched to me over the years. So it's kind of, if there's that passion there, it really makes a difference.
Thanks, Geraldine. I'm just wondering because COVID was unfortunately the perfect test scenario for this
Mhm.
digital pivot for the likes of yourself and Ashleen. I'm just wondering,
Mhm.
with your recent experiences, obviously we had seen a fantastic video there where we had someone who was saying that, you know, technology is not beyond anybody that's over a certain age.
Yeah.
But have you experienced, I'm just thinking what you just mentioned about the brain diabetes trial and the online engagement where it
Mm.
was a little more challenging for some
Mm.
people. What is the learning curve like, and is it achievable for everyone, and is it in a reasonable enough time to make it accessible for everyone? What's been your experience of it?
Okay, I think first thing is everyone's different and one size doesn't fit all. Okay. And with support, I think technology is very accessible to people. With support, and we've seen that with the community hubs, with the lone worker helping people to log on. I think some of the systems are quite complex. I mean, how do you manage all your passwords and two-factor authentication? Even with pivoting to online for teaching, we had to do that so much more in University of Galway as well. But yet we need, there is a need for face to face. You don't want your doctor to be trained and not know how to actually examine somebody. You have to have both sides to it. So I think it's always thinking or trying to pitch it to the right level. And if someone needs support, to give them support. I think it'll be a moot point in years to come because technology, when I was in school, computers involved typing in lots of different codes, and if you left something out, you were finished. You couldn't, that was it. It wouldn't work. Whereas now it's much more user friendly, and I think in 20 years' time, it won't be such a difficulty. But certainly the current older people. But again, some people totally embrace it. I had a 94-year-old patient who didn't want to go into a nursing home because she was afraid she couldn't keep on having Skype meetings with her kids in America or her grandkids in America, after school every day, because she wasn't sure the nursing home would have that, so it's amazing. And literally they just leave it on. It was just on, and, the kids be coming in, coming out or whatever. So, I think with the right support, I think anything is possible. I think coming up with simple solutions, maybe one app for the person, simple things to make it less complicated to link in and to monitor things and to engage. And I think people do embrace it. And I've genuinely been surprised by some of the people who I, never would have thought would have engaged, and they absolutely love it. I mean, I've one lady, and I mean, Alexa is her best friend now. And she, even when I call and see her at home, she kind of is checking, when's my appointment with my cardiologist? And, she gets that, or when's it, she's totally embraced it. So I think we're all different. I'll be properly cranky when I'm older, and I'll be demanding, and there'll be different needs that I'll have, and my technology use is basic. So I think it's just no one size doesn't fit all. I think it's a key message.
Thank you, Geraldine. I suppose this is something I'm going to go around the room now for this one, because you're all involved in innovation in one way or another. You're all closely linked with it. So we've spoken on how to identify problems, but we're going to have mixed teams of multidisciplinary teams, people coming from different backgrounds. We're going to have health scientists with engineers, with persons from creative practice. These are all going to be different viewpoints and different ideas, and they're all going into a melting pot. How do you know which is the good idea? Because we're all working in multidisciplinary teams ourselves, and this may not be the experience of our students yet. But how do you identify in that group what is a good idea from all of the ideas that people will be throwing up? And we can start with John for that one.
Yeah, sure. So look, I'll just give you a little bit of an insight into BioInnovate. I mean, obviously, in that program, if people are not familiar with it, we would go into a clinical setting and monitor multiple cases of particular chronic disease or an operation or whatever it might be. But basically, you jot down all these ideas, all these needs, but you need to filter them. So I think coming up with the criteria of how you filter your list of observations, or in this case, your ideas, I think that's what's critical. So coming up with criteria like, novelty, will it be clinical adoption of this, commercial viability, is it a tortuous path for regulatory affairs? Come up with criteria across commercial, technical, and regulatory in various areas like that, and then rate those ideas against it. Because you will have absolutely fantastic ideas, but ultimately you want to fail fast and fail early with the ideas that will not pass those filters. And if your ideas pass the filters, then you're onto something strong.
Thanks, John. Caroline, do you want to jump in? What's the process? Because you're involved, I imagine you're involved across, and actually, apologies, because I know you're only fairly recent to the role as well, so throwing you in at the deep end again. But I'm lots of healthy campus initiatives across the country, and I know Yvonne's rolled out loads of things here. But I'm just wondering, what is the process? Because again, the healthy campus is so broad. How do you pick out what are we going to pursue this year, or what are we pursuing in the long term? What's the process for that?
Yeah, and it probably links to John's piece, and I'm sure everyone's probably going to touch on it in terms of stakeholders, but sometimes it's political or maybe it's timing. So, yeah, like for example, I was in an institution and tobacco-free campus just was not a go. Senior management just would constantly say no. So I could have wasted energy at that. But I think in terms of coming up with ideas as a group, that have a facilitated session, have a session that has a plan where you have those filters, and maybe everyone comes to the meeting thinking about those metrics for your idea, getting people to really drill down the idea. And once you get into a space and you have a facilitated meeting, maybe you have an external person do that. We had a facilitated meeting with an alcohol committee within an institution I was in, and I mean, I did do a bit of groundwork thinking about, I'm going to look at the alcohol and tobacco. There's a strategy looking at alcohol and drugs and tobacco. So I looked at that, and then we had the students union person there, and I knew they had a particular interest or could see a need. We had one of the academics, he could see a need, and it was also in that framework. So it just sort of happened. We could tell social spaces was a thing. There's no place for students to hang out or socialize other than the pub. I mean, that's so sometimes you're doing something for a topic, but it's not specifically the topic. Maybe it's mobilizing business 24-hour businesses on campus that are student led. I mean, so it's and that can just happen organically, but having a facilitated kind of container and being authentic, but being mindful and, saying how you feel in that meeting or in that discussion. And I think the group mentality really will help shape that. And you do have to consider, if you are looking at something that's broader than the political landscape, is it topical? When we think about mental health, we often go to services, but can we think upstream? Are people ready for that? Is that what students are saying, the student voice? So I think if you do that piece of work before having that session, I think it'll happen.
Thank you, Caroline. That's some great insight. Geraldine, I'm just thinking, because you work in such a large team, and when you guys have ideas about when there is a need that's identified, how do you pick the best idea out of the loads that you have? Because you did mention at the start of your talk as well, when you were going paperless, about all of the ideas that never made it off the desk. So how do you differentiate those ones that make it off the desk to those ones that stayed there?
Well, what we try and do, we kind of try and meet regularly, like we meet regularly as a team for management of our clinical caseload and for, looking after complex cases. So we meet every week for that. But we also have every 3 months we have a kind of a team session, sort of looking at the business, but also, so we've had external people come in to help us, literally, with just coming up with ideas of things we'd like to develop. But we as a team come up with goals for each year as to, things that we'd like to develop. So the projects that we've done over the many years has led to kind of some improvement or something new. Somebody will look at particular prescribing of medication and say, we could do, we were kind of saying, well, we could do better at that. So then that's, we agree that that's something that we're going to intervene on. Or and it's that whole thing that it doesn't have, things aren't set in stone. So somebody said, well, actually the way that we communicate is taking too long for the letters to go out. How can we have something immediately going out to the GP, or, linking with the pharmacy, or, just really engaging properly. So I think it's a culture of the team, a culture of always evaluating and looking, and then trying to get some kind of consensus on it. I mean, the really good ideas, they just jump out at you, you kind of think, why didn't I think of that? They're just super, and you kind of can really see how they can make a difference. But you have to try them, and sometimes they don't work. Sometimes things don't work, and then you have to kind of evolve. And I think it's always been open to try things to see, if this can make a better deal for the people that we're looking after. So always been feel able to, like, for example, the care opinion, the feedback that's an online thing. It was the patients that were raising things about the parking being rubbish, and kind of and that's really helpful then, because you can go to management and say, well, look, it's not us just complaining, it's there's actually a real problem for the people that we're looking after. So I think it's always been open to listen, and not say, well, this is just the way that we do it and that's it, and you can always been open. I think that's really, really key. And then having a kind of a team, and people have different opinions, and we've done kind of team training and looking at the team roles. Some people are really good at coming up with ideas, some people are really good at implementing things, and you kind of try and work to the strengths of your team. And I think that's all, but I think, and then when new people come in, we always have new people, new senior regs come in every year, and you learn from them, and they come up with things. Why do you do that? You can think, oh, okay. And you can look at it again. So I think it's just, being open and being willing to evolve and change, and listening to the main people who are the patients that we look after.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Geraldine, for that insight as well. And Aisling, now your turn with it. And I'm going to refer, Aisling, to one of your slides where you had the 3 columns of the projects completed, the ones underway, and the not yet started. How do the ideas get onto those columns? Because the completed was quite a significant number. Although I'm sure you've got loads of ideas that you would wish to add to it. But how do you get onto those columns? The not yet started one particularly. How do you get onto that there one? Or is that the one that, is there a risk of ones in that column slipping away? How do you get them from not yet started to underway, perhaps, is a better question.
Yeah, so that's our tracking of our team. It's not just projects, it's also the whole comes into our office. And what we do every Monday morning is we have a team, those projects are put up and we go through them, and exactly what everyone else said, we play to the team skills. So it's dependent on if someone's running a project or are they the right person to take it. So we've talked about a lot of different things within, when you're building an idea, it's not just about the tech. You need someone to project manage it. You need your business plan together. You need your economics guys. You need your researchers. Our team's tiny, but we have lots of departments around us. So we'll actually work with the around us. One of the biggest barriers actually is the economics and the funding. For us with projects, stability, it needs to be within sort of our frameworks, it needs to be within our care, and then a lot of times for innovation, we have funding ourselves. They're the really robust business plans, able to show benefit to services and what that will bring. Is helpful for when we're trying to go for funding pitches. So we have to do funding pitches as well. The money's not always there for innovation.
Yeah, again, some great insights there. Thank you very much. And I think that's an important consideration that I think all the students should have. There's a few things that come out there, but the financial planning, if you come up with a solution, how much is it going to cost, and is it going to be viable? Is it going to pay for itself, in the longer term? Because critically, that's what's, that it will have to pay for itself. It's going to have to make sense economically, because it may be the best solution in the world, but if it's not cost effective, then there's nobody going to invest in it. So I'm just thinking, guys, some closing remarks from each of you. And the question that I want you all to answer is, what would be your advice to the students who are participating in this? What's your take home message about taking part in this competition? Personally, what do you see as the benefits of participating? And why would you suggest to one of our students to get involved? And I'll start with Geraldine for that one, please.
Well, I have to say, there's a great prize at the end of it and a wonderful opportunity. So that would be certainly a really good driver. But it's also the opportunity to make a difference, to come up with something that's actually meaningful and that can be implemented and that can really help. And there's huge satisfaction when you do that. And the fact that it is going to a bigger audience, to a larger, to go further afield. I'm kind of, my daughter's in TY and she said, I've got 3 weeks to come up with the best scientific invention that's ever thought of. It's not always the no one has ever thought of. It's maybe something that's adapted or evolved, and have it something that you're passionate about. That does make a big difference.
Thanks, Geraldine. Aisling, do you want to jump in there?
Apart from the fact you get to work with our team, the things for us is it's about giving patient choice. It's about helping patients. It's about helping staff. It's about better outcomes at the end for us. And very much we're so pro co-design and things. So we could come up with ideas, but having this competition is going to give us the ideas, and it's actually going to come from people that are coming with experiences and give us that insight that we might not have when we're working in our departments. We're quite siloed, so it will just give us ideas that maybe that as HSC staff that.
Thanks, Aisling. Caroline, what's your advice for our students?
Well, I'm sort of thinking more in your career development piece. I think I remember doing an assignment in a multidisciplinary way and just learning how to deal with different people, different personalities, different disciplines. I mean, when you work in health promotion, that's all you do, that's your bread and butter. So if you're good at relationships, if you work in health promotion, it's all about relationships. If I have a positive relationship in another department, I'll get something done. So it ultimately has a better, that the outcomes can often be better. And magic, I know it sounds a bit, but like magical things can happen if you've good relationships. Like I made a good relationship with the cleaning staff and they agreed to to keep all our condom machines filled. So it's just really about that, learning to work with other people. And if you have an idea and your idea doesn't come through, can you get behind your team and really come together? And I would just love to see maybe some of those teams having the opportunity to present to the president or senior management, or maybe you go through the director of student support and you say, hey, we want to do this for our whole campus through Vaughan. When can we come to senior management? When can we present to the president? And that's going to be a massive skill to you. So it's the skills you're going to pick up along the way that are so inherent to the workplace. And I think reflecting on where you feel like maybe I would like to lean into communication styles a bit better after this, I think you'll learn so much.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm not sure. Is this a gentle pressure to promote the drug testing idea to the president?
No, I know I kind of hold it on drugs, but I'm thinking about mental health. I just think the student voice is so important, and really challenge your institution, like really challenge those people in leadership positions. If you are working with a group, you got to challenge the guys with the power. And I know you talk about funding, but maybe you pilot something and you show them that it saves them money. So maybe all the money doesn't need to come from you. And I don't know if that goes against some of the other when it comes to the other project or the other day. But yeah, sorry, we're going to went off on a tangent. So yeah, hopefully
we are fortunate as well in that each of the student teams will be presenting. So Una Parsons, who is our head of campus for Sligo, is part of the judging panel. So they will get an opportunity to present to Una, and I will be pushing as well after this, so that we can push it. depend on the outcome of the competition, but that we'll push some of these ideas with Yvonne's support and hopefully Una's support and others towards senior management. If we've got a good idea, we want to see it come to fruition. We don't want it to die a death at the competition. We want this to be brought on to the next stage. And our innovation centre here is committed to supporting students to bring some of their ideas for products and services to the next stage, as well as in providing training to them. So we're looking to put in an entire package here so it's starting with this competition, but hopefully it's the first step in a path for many of these young people to develop their ideas into products and services, and also actually have their voices heard. Thanks, Caroline.
Brilliant.
Geraldine, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, no, it's just, I was sorry, I kind of didn't mention that before. I mean, Caroline's that value for money piece and the health economics piece. Certainly it's something that I have done many times over the years, is that, you show the benefit of a particular thing that you do. And actually, for example, in our case, having a day hospital and really outreach to people's homes, you can avoid people going into long-term care, avoid people coming into hospital, and they'd much rather be at home. So looking at the kind of value piece, that sells itself then. And some of those Genio projects that I was involved with, if you train up people to support other people, they get the benefit of the training, but then it doesn't have to cost money kind of going forward. And I think that it's kind of a cultural thing, but just to think about that too, it doesn't always have to be lots of money. My motto is no grant is too small, and you can make a lot out of a very small amount if you kind of put your mind to it. So I think, I think it's very much important to think about that. A little shift can make a huge difference, and it doesn't always have to cost a lot of money. So.
Thanks, Geraldine. John, do you want to close us out with your advice for the students as well, please?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think first of all, as an experience, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's a hugely satisfying exercise. So this is a great test bed to get in there and see, working with people that are creative, that are different to your view, have different biases to you. And I think, innovation strives on chaos and intensity. And, sometimes conflict in the team is not always bad. I'm not encouraging that the team falls apart by any means, but, if it's a little bit edgy, you'll probably come up with some of the more particularly good ideas. But then it does come right back down to the practicalities, the economics of it, the structure around the team, the time management, and the research into the final area to justify and validate the area to convince the team ultimately. If you convince yourselves, that's, your body language will go a long way in telling us that you believe in this idea and you've researched it, and it has great potential.
Thank you, John. Sorry, yes, I jump in.
But I'm just going to quickly add on that, is that the one thing when you're doing pitches is tell a story. Just make sure that it comes across. You can understand Doreen's told a story there about her journey. So it's really, really good to sort of get that. So bring it to how will it actually make an impact, whether it's for the staff or patients or students, whoever it is. Give an example, use case studies or personas. It's always a very good way of getting your across.
Thanks, Aisling. Well, I'm going to wrap this up now. And first things, I would just like to thank all of our guests, Geraldine, Aisling, John, and Caroline, for joining us this afternoon. This video will be available for people to watch back and to absorb all of that great advice and great insight that's been provided. So you can watch all that in preparation for the competition. I strongly you all to register. The registration link is in the description below this video. It's also on our webpage, and I hope to see many of you guys participating at the event next month. So thanks to our guests, and I'll see you all hopefully at the live event in a little over 3 weeks' time.